When we try to understand why we might be feeling unhappy, we tend to be drawn to reasons relatively close to home. It's natural. We look at our immediate world, our friends, our relationships, our health, our jobs, our families, or the relentless demands of our schedules. What we tend not to do, however, is to zoom out and start talking about our place in history. It would sound overblown, perhaps even a little self-important, to begin to pin a sizable portion of our difficulties on broad historical forces. I'm feeling down today because of the decline of sacredness in late-stage capitalism just isn't something you hear over coffee. Yet, whatever role our own unique psyches, our family dynamics, and our colleagues might be playing in our moods, a proper understanding of our situation cannot be complete without considering the highly peculiar and novel era in which we exist. We are troubled, in large part, because we dwell in historically unbalanced times. To ignore this context is like trying to understand why a plant is wilting without considering the soil it's in or the weather it's facing. Let's travel back for a moment. At the center of all pre-modern societies were powers that helped to put humans in their place. These are the older, bigger, stronger, holier phenomena. Perhaps it was a pantheon of gods thundering from a mountaintop, a vast and unknowable natural energy, or the quiet whispers of ancestral spirits. However important humans might have felt, however grand the aristocracy or urgent the news of the day, people fundamentally knew that they were not the measure of all things. They understood, in their bones, that above and beyond the earthly realm, there was something else more mysterious, more imposing, and infinitely strangerdo, which they would all regularly have to bow. This greater power served a vital psychological function. It would relativize them in one another's eyes. The fanciest king, adorned in gold and silk, was still just a mortal man, nothing next to a thunderous god. The mightiest human inventione, a great ship, or a cathedral was utterly pathetic next to the power of an angry sea or an earthquake. This perspective provided a kind of cosmic humility. But today, where do we look for awe? More often than not, we look at ourselves. We humans are the most astonishing things we can conceive of. It's our own momentous doings, our dazzling intelligence, and our incomprehensibly wondrous technologies that mesmerize us and sit at the very center of our collective consciousness. In this new world, as Nietzsche famously declared, God has died. Nature, once a terrifying and sublime force, is now something to be managed, conserved, pitted, and patronized like a wounded, once proud animal in a zoo. We have lost any redeeming sense of our own unimportance. We are giants walking on a tiny stage, and we've forgotten the sky above us. At the very same time, as our collective ego has inflated, so too have the expectations placed on each individual. Each one of us is told, repeatedly from childhood, that we can do and be anything. The messaging is relentless. With sufficient hard work, grit, and passion, you might assume the presidency, unlock a major scientific secret, found a billion-dollar company, or become known to the entire planet through your athletic or artistic prowess. And with this promise comes a dark shadow. We are subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, informed that only this kind of very special destiny is valid. A quiet life, a good life, is no longer enough. There is little dignity left in a so-called ordinary life. There is nothing to celebrate, we are told, in an unheralded, unknown existence dedicated to raising a decent family, being a good friend, and contributing to a local community. We feel we cannot live quietly and be in bed by 9. We must become someone, a brand, a name. If we don't, we are taught to look on with a toxic cocktail of envy and rage at those who have, seemingly, evaded the perils of mediocrity that we so fear. Our social media feeds become highlight reels of everyone else's extraordinary moments, while we are intimately aware of our own mundane reality. This sense of personal failure is then amplified by another modern marvel, the fire hose of global information. We used to know almost nothing of what happened beyond our own valley or shoreline. Life went by so slowly, at the pace of seasons and sunsets. We were often without appreciating how much this kept us sane, just a little bit bored. Now, no bloodshed, no political scandal, no heart-wrenching tragedy, no looming peril can occur anywhere on the planet without us hearing of it in minutes, complete with high-resolution video. As a result, we find ourselves in a state of continuous, low-grade unrest and alarm. We are marinating in a soup of global anxiety. Our nervous systems, designed for immediate, local threats, are now perpetually activated by distant, abstract ones. We are unable to set anything negative in a proper context, unsure of how to evaluate our species, and often terrified to trust or speak to a stranger who might be the next villain in a news report. We constantly feel that we are leading the wrong lives because we are shown a million other lives we could be leading. We know everything, it seems, except for the quiet, less perceptible things that really matter. Our attention is drawn only to our discords, our spitefulness, and our cruelty. We've been stripped of the opportunities to simply contemplate the older, slower currents of Lefido draw deep, calming inspiration from the predictable arc of the dawn, the gentle murmurings of doves or robins, or the silent, reassuring presence of ancient trees that speak of time measured in centuries, not seconds. Into this lonely, anxious state, we are sold one primary solution: romantic love. We've been handed the idea that the one true answer to our deep loneliness lies in finding the one. And so, we search with frantic abandon in the lonely, concrete canyons of our modern megalopolises for a single, very special being who can be everything to us. They must be our best friend, our passionate sexual partner, our intellectual equal, our weekend playmate, our surrogate kindergarten teacher, our five-star cook, and our personal chauffeur. Then, when we inevitably cannot find this mythical creature, or when our very real, flawed, beautiful partner fails to live up to this impossible job description and perceive ourselves as having been uniquely cursed, we feel like a failure in the one game that was supposed to save us. We misunderstand the sheer generality of the problem and miss the profound solace available in the less febrile, less prestigious, but far more sustainable realm of friendship. We forget the strength that comes from distributing our needs more equitably among a whole community, a tapestry of relationships where none of its members needs to answer to the whole of anyone's longings. We have been rendered exceptionally lonely by the unwittingly cruel notion of a soulmate. And what of our work? In the past, many of us could stand back at the end of a day or a week and see something substantial and solid that we had made: a well-built chair, a sturdy set of horseshoes, a warm house. There was a direct link between our effort and a tangible, useful outcome. Now, we occupy ourselves with tasks that have been infinitely subdivided and thereby lost much of their wider logic. We carry professional titles like logistics controller, automation specialist, or human resource manager that show us up as minute, often replaceable cogs in endlessly complicated engines. We might be richer than ever in material terms, but we struggle to see what difference we could possibly make in anyone else's life. We are alienated from the fruits of our labor, and that sense of purpose is hard to replace. All the while, we lose ourselves in temptations which our ancient, evolutionary past leaves us defenseless against. Our brains were programmed for a world of scarcity. Because we were programmed to eat any sugary tina, rare handful of blackberries, or a sun-ripened apricot that came our way, we now cannot resist the endless plethora of satanic, hyper-palatable confections on offer on every street corner. Because in our old villages we might have seen one or two new, fertile people a day, our novelty-seeking brains now can't stop looking at the ceaseless digital processions of the unclothed and the curated, available at the flick of a thumb. We simply have no innate willpower to resist the pitiless, perfectly engineered delights of the modern world. It's hard to reverse any of these massive, tectonic pressures we've been placed under. You can't single-handedly reinvent the global economy or shut down the internet. But even if we cannot, simply knowing that these external forces exist is profoundly liberating. It helps us to locate the origins of many of our troubles with greater fairness and self-compassion. The truth is, you are not uniquely or personally awful, frantic, greedy, or degenerate. We are all living under historically exceptional pressures. To know ourselves properly is to honor how much of our madness does not belong simply to us, but to the strange, bewildering, and often overwhelming times we live in. But this understanding is not a sentence. It is a key. It is not an excuse for despair, but a foundation for a new kind of wisdom. Recognizing the historical currents that buffet us is the first step toward charting our own course. While we cannot turn back the tide of modernity, we can learn to build a stronger vessel for ourselves. We can find our own sense of the sacred, not necessarily in an old religion, but by standing under a vast, starry night sky and feeling our own magnificent insignificance. We can reclaim the profound dignity of an ordinary life by celebrating the small, consistent acts of kindness and creation, the things that will never make the news but make a life worthwhile. We can consciously curate our intake of information, choosing to focus on what uplifts and connects us rather than what alarms and divides us. We can deliberately invest in our friendships, treating them with the seriousness we've been taught to reserve only for romance. We can find purpose not in a grand title, but in the tangible pride of a well-tended garden, a perfectly cooked meal shared with loved ones, or the joy in a child's unfiltered laughter. We are historical creatures, yes, but we are also the pioneers of a new chapter, tasked with figuring out how to be human in this new world. By consciously choosing where to place our attention, our energy, and our love, we can find a profound and quiet happiness right here in the very heart of our beautiful, unbalanced times. If these ideas resonate with you, and you'd like to explore more ways to navigate the challenges of modern life with wisdom and grace, please consider subscribing to our channel. We're building a community dedicated to finding clarity and peace in a complex world, and we would be honored to have you with us on the journey.